Welcome to Doc NYC and the special Q&A for The Fight. I'm Tom Powers, the festival's artistic director. This film is playing as part of Doc NYC's shortlist section, where we choose 15 films that we think will be top award contenders for this year. I'm pleased to have with me the film's directors, Elyse Steinberg and Josh Kriegman in New York, and Eli Despres in Los Angeles. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So I want to state up front, I had a small connection to this film just as you were getting started. I have a friend at the who was at the ACLU at the time, Stacy Sullivan, who appears briefly in your film and works in the communications department. And she came to me in 2017 and said, there's these filmmakers who want to film here. Do you think that would be a good idea? And because I knew you guys from your previous film, Wiener, I gave her the encouragement that she should let you in. It wasn't only up to her, but let me start there in asking you about what it took to win the trust of the ACLU to get in filming. Obviously, when you're dealing with legal cases, it's a big decision for them to let journalists follow them around all the time.
It was not easy, and we are very grateful for your telling Stacy that we're okay. I remember her saying, "So I have this friend, Tom Powers. I'm going to check in." I was like, "Okay." But yeah, the story it's this classic documentary story where we went to the ACLU and we pitched them our vision, which was to get embedded at the ACLU national office and following all the lawyers in their legal battles against the Trump administration. So we wanted to be with them at their homes, in strategy meetings, just complete verite at their office, following them around. And Stacy was there when we made our pitch in the room, and so were a few other ACLU lawyers. And Stacy called me the next day and said, "Look, we really appreciate your vision, but I have to tell you, it's not going to happen. There's just no way this group of lawyers will ever let you in." And Josh, Eli, and I, we looked at each other like, maybe we can work with this. I think we might be able to find a way. I mean, she seemed to like us. She said some kind of, the rule of documentary, no is the beginning of a yes. And I think that held true here. And there was just a series of conversations. And eventually we got to be able to film one lawyer, Lee. And then Lee let us in, and then Dale was like, I'll let these guys in. And eventually we just started to just film with more and more lawyers, and the organization just realized, okay, this is an important moment that just needs to be documented, and it's worth it to have a film.
To me, one of the great documentary skills at work in this film is interweaving these four stories. Each one of them is complex on its own. And you've got to, keep a narrative going, keep us shifting between these characters. In the final film, it's seamless, but I know that there's a lot of work that goes into that. Can one of you talk about the editing of the film?
Sure. I mean, it's hard. There's some wonderful things about weaving stories together. About you can set up tension in one through line and answer it in another. There are things that can happen in the edit room on a movie with multiple stories that you don't have as many tools, as many arrows in your quiver on a straight through line. But balancing the stories and titrating how much information so that the audience can keep everything straight is a real challenge. And it was a edit team on this movie. Kim Roberts and Greg Fitton came on board, who are both master documentary filmmakers and have ridiculous credits.
And Eli.
Me, yes. Together. It was fun. It was a fun collaborative experience, both in the five of us moving cards around and figuring out how to make this weave and keep building tension. But I wish there was an easier way to get from A to B in terms of putting a movie together than just tearing your hair out and beating your heads against it. And it really was a lot of very, very smart, clever storytellers that weren't us working together with us to make this happen.
I think that, one of the things that I think Eli and the edit team did so well, that was a major challenge, was figuring out how to deal with the rhythms of these stories. I mean, each of these stories has a natural beginning, middle, and end with these court cases that obviously they come up, they fight them, they argue them in court, and they get a resolution. But of course, in real time, they didn't all happen sort of perfectly in the right way so that they would work well in the whole rhythm of the entire film. So that was one of the major challenges that I think ultimately came together in a way that worked rhythmically, was figuring out how to have them crescendo together at the same time and resolve in the same way that felt satisfying to watch.
Yeah, no, Josh is absolutely right. Each story could have been its own movie, and the decision to sort of have them all come together, forget the timeline for a bit, and have the narrative happen at the same time. You're absolutely right, Tom. It was a feat of editing that Eli, deserves a lot of credit for.
Yeah, Eli doesn't take enough credit.
He doesn't like credit, so I got it.
So obviously you came into this because you admired these ACLU lawyers and had some feel for the work that they do. But I wonder what you learned about the work they do as you went along in this process.
I think that, coming in, ACLU was just this institution that I had known forever, and my mother was a lawyer who fought for immigrant rights. And so ACLU was a part of my upbringing. And I had no idea, though, who were these people behind this big organization, and getting to know them. I think for me, the biggest thing that I think about, now you get these headlines like voting rights and what's happening, and I just think about the people behind them and the lawyers, and what I have come away with is just how personal it is for them. Like, they think about their clients all the time. It is just, you can have these kinds of theoretical discussions about what it means to defend the First Amendment, or what it means to defend various constitutional rights, but for lawyers defending it, there's a person behind there. There's a client, and there's a lawyer who's standing up for that client, and that is a very emotional thing. And I think about the emotion of our lawyers and their clients, and it's not abstract anymore for me.
I think also it was a delightful discovery. Going into a movie about lawyers, we weren't sure how dynamic it would be. There's a lot of footage on the cutting room floor of people sitting at desks reading and typing, and inevitably that's part of the process. But I think what we did discover is that, first of all, the people at the heart of these fights are just incredibly dynamic and exciting to be with. Charismatic and funny and brilliant and full of energy, and just like a delight to share time with, and inspiring. And then also there are moments, in the course of following these cases that really do live up to kind of the cinematic, expectations and hopes for like the kinds of dramatic things that happen. Rulings come down in surprising moments, and there's, I guess running to the copy machine shouldn't necessarily be an action scene, but in our movie it is, but there are moments where really exciting things do happen in the course of litigating these cases. And it was exciting to watch.
One of the people on your producing team is Kerry Washington, known for playing a political fixer herself in Scandal. Can you talk about how she got involved with the project and what she's meant to it?
Kerry's been a spectacular partner in this, a really just savvy producer, very, very smart. Anything that she touches gets better. And she, I would say that she's, her character on television is a little bit more salacious and crazy than in real life, but she has been instrumental in making things happen all along the line, and she is something of a fixer in real life. We really could not be happier with the partnership. She's a force of nature.
And just one of the things about her is that it wasn't like the three of us were like, could we get a celebrity producer to really help this project? That's not how it happened. What happened was she also wanted to make a verite documentary with the ACLU. So we kind of had this mind meld with her. So it was a true, like, we were making this documentary, and then she had the idea, and then she found out, oh, these directors, they're doing it, let's meet together. So it was a shared vision, which I think, so she was a partner from the beginning all along, and really had a similar, this is her first documentary project that she's ever produced. So she put her heart in it.
So these lawyers are normally working behind the scenes. What's it meant to them to get recognition from this film being out in the world?
Well, one thing was fun for us was that at Sundance, we were walking up Main Street with Kerry Washington, and we sort of got used to fans and paparazzi being, oh, Kerry, holy smokes. But after the film premiered and a couple days into it, we started getting used to people saying, oh, Kerry, wait a minute, it's Dale Ho from the ACLU. It was fun for us to watch them kind of, oh my God, fast as I guess get some of the credit from the public that they deserve. And it became harder and harder for them to buy their own drinks and meals the longer we were there, which is nice.
Yeah, it was very satisfying. I mean, a lot of their work is not, is grueling, as you can see in the film, and not necessarily. Sometimes I think a little thankless, and it was nice to feel like they were really getting sort of some recognition that they really deserve. I mean, these are true heroes, and it's I'm glad that their stories are being sort of seen more publicly.
As I wrap this up, your team also does the series Couples Therapy, and it feels like the ACLU cases are never ending and could be a series themselves. I mean, is that something that ever came up?
What are we allowed to talk about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it definitely occurred to us that you could potentially extend these stories. I mean, obviously the cases are ongoing. I mean, there's been unbelievable developments in all the cases that we followed since the film premiered and has been released. But ultimately, we decided that this felt better as a more contained experience, and that we wanted to preserve that sort of singular experience of getting exposed to these stories, and it felt more compelling to us that way in the end.
We are speaking right now, I should clarify, on November 6th. There are still ballots being counted in this country to determine the outcome of our presidential race. But when this presidential race is over, I guess I want to think about it in relation to your film, which is very much concentrated on the ACLU suing the Trump administration. If Donald Trump is no longer president next year, I wonder what your reflections are about the role of the ACLU.
Well, I think one thing to, keep in mind, I mean, obviously this has been a crazy few days, I think, for all of us, and certainly for me, trying to sort of process it all. But one thing to remember, I mean, I think there's two things I've been trying to keep in mind. One is to, assuming that Joe Biden is going to be announced as the president-elect at some point later today, is to appreciate that victory, but then also to recognize that this was, in every other way, an extraordinary election for Republicans and for the conservative side of the fight. And, I mean, this has always been true about the ACLU, that the fight to preserve civil liberties never ends under Democratic presidents, under Republican ones. But I think that especially in this context, that, these fights are going to continue, and there's no end in sight for the work to fight to defend our rights and the Constitution. I mean, and this is something that comes up at the end of the film. You know, and Dale mentions this at the end of the film, that, you know, they will continue to fight and work in the courts, but ultimately a lot of what we need to progress and defend our civil liberties is going to be people voting and working in the streets as well.
And I think, you know, the film began because of, I mean, the origin story is that I was at the steps of the Brooklyn courthouse when I saw Legal Learned emerge, having won that victory. And in that moment, I felt like, okay, here is a David versus Goliath story. Here is a little guy doing good work who is able to stop the federal government, the president, and his massive order that came down. And what our movie shows is that it's just regular people doing their jobs that can create huge change. And I think that is the message that our film has, where what Josh was saying, it's people that can do this, and the people that can do this are the lawyers in our movie. I keep on also thinking about how, you know, RBG worked at the ACLU. Like, one of our lawyers could be a Supreme Court justice. It's just these regular people out there doing extraordinary things. And that's a message that is just evergreen. It's just evergreen.
Maybe this will turn out to be a prequel to a bigger story for one of your lawyers.
That could be, yeah.
Eli, Josh, and Elyse, thank you very much for your film and for taking time with us today.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you.
You.